You guys are consummate professionals, so I have no doubt.
And this is a debut for both of us, right?
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. We'll talk about it now. Okay. Ready? Okay.
Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it! So here's what you get. From Canada, Ryan and Ruben.
All right, welcome everyone to the Worst of the Best podcast. I am your host, or one of the hosts, Ryan. Ruben. Boy, this sounds like an ongoing theme of my podcast, but Ruben isn't here today. He gave full permission and blessing, though, that I got some guest hosts with me today for this show. As with all things in life, especially with the Christmas season upon us, he's very busy with his business and his family activities, and we're 3 hours apart, which just makes recordings difficult for his timings and my timings of life. But with me, I have a very good, I would say, friends. The brothers that I haven't met in real life from other mothers, but people that I've podcast with on my other Rocky Series podcast. So you listeners who listen to this podcast know these voices very well. But if you're only a Worst of the Best podcast listener, I have with me Doug from the Rocky Minute podcast and Craig from the Slycast podcast. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Doug. I'm one of the hosts of the Rocky Minute, where we go through the Rocky movies. We analyze 1 minute of movie footage at a time. It's very daunting, but, it's very rewarding and fun. And I've had both of these fine gentlemen guest hosts on my show as well.
Yeah, and I'm Craig from the Slycast, and what we do is we are chronologically traveling through Stallone's filmography from his very first movie to his very current movie. We're taking our time getting there. It's been a great experience, and it's how I met these two gentlemen. So, been a really rewarding podcasting experience.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm really excited that you're on the show today. Without further ado, like we do on this podcast, we're going to get right into it. The topic today is Robert De Niro films, his top grossing films. This guy has been in a lot of movies. What's your general feeling about him as an overall actor?
I like him for the most part. I think he's pretty versatile. I'm not crazy about his comedy stuff, although, some of it's good. I think he's a real versatile actor. In real life, I think he's a little strange. I've seen him in interviews where he's just, I don't know, just a bore. But but on screen playing a character, I think he's a fine actor, really fine actor.
Yeah, it's hard to not be aware of what an important actor De Niro is when you're around our age. He's become a little bit of a joke in the last 20 years, which is crazy to say. But if you look at his early body of work, he's considered one of the finest American actors that we've had, and, rightfully so. I do agree with Doug that I think his versatility is pretty remarkable, and also his commitment to parts. I guess it's that method.
Craig, we lost Craig. Craig, you back? Is it?
He's frozen. Look at that face.
Well, I don't want to say it's my internet if we're seeing each other, Doug. I don't want to point the finger at Craig, but
whose internet is this? It's got to be his, right?
Man down, Craig.
Oh man, he'll just have to rejoin. I don't know how it works.
We'll get him back in. Yeah, he's going to reboot, he said. So we'll just continue. It's all good.
I didn't hear the end of his De Niro spiel.
He was just saying that the same thing, that the last 20 years he's kind of gone weird.
All right.
He's an interesting character because I've never gone out of my way to see a De Niro film because he's in it. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. There are other actors that I do that for. Obviously, Stallone, Kurt Russell comes to mind, or a Quentin Tarantino film. There's certain directors and actors that I specifically go see regardless of who else is in the film. It just so happens that De Niro has been in so many films that I've seen those films as well, and we'll talk about some of those films, of course. There's very few films I don't think I've ever gone to watch because he's in it.
The thing about him is he's done so many different types of films, from mob movies, which I think he's most known for, to like rom-coms. And I'm not going to seek out a De Niro film like The Intern. That subject matter doesn't interest me. But if you tell me De Niro's going to be in a mob movie, De Niro's going to be in a military style movie like Men of Honor, I'll watch that because I think he's such a great actor, and especially the mob movies. I mean, that goes without saying. He's going to nail those roles because that's what he's most known for, I think.
Did you watch The Irishman yet?
Not yet, man. I've the 3 or what is it? 3.5 or 2.5?
Yeah, it's like 3 hours and 40 minutes almost.
It's going to have to be broken up into segments because I can't sit and watch a 3.5 hour movie in one sitting. So I think that's what has kept me from watching it so far is just the length of it. But I've heard mostly good things. The only negative I heard about it is that it gets slow in spots. But I mean, it's a 3.5 hour movie. You can't have wall to wall action. And I also think that people are expecting a typical De Niro mob movie with a lot of violence and a lot of bloodshed, which I don't think this has.
No, not a lot. I was actually surprised by it. Not in a bad way, but after Goodfellas and what have you, or Gangs of New York with Martin Scorsese, who directed films, or even The Departed, those weren't dependent on violence, but they certainly had violent moments throughout. I really enjoyed The Irishman. Mm-hmm. I really did. I thought the de-aging was actually so well done. The only, not the bad thing about it, but only because I don't know the ages of the actual characters necessarily, so it was hard for me sometimes to tell what timeline I was looking at because it jumps timelines a little bit. So I had a hard time, like, what timeline is this necessarily? But the de-aging was actually so good that I forgot how old De Niro was, or is, if that makes sense. It looked like a lot of, like, between 85, 95 De Niro.
Like a Goodfellas?
Yeah, or Casino.
Era. Casino.
And Craig actually brought this up as a good point during one of our recordings on the Rocky Series podcast when we were talking about Escape Plan. He mentioned that one of his fears, or one of the things that he was going to look for in The Irishman with the de-aging, was to see if they still moved like older men, even though their faces are younger. And that did happen, but it's not a criticism. It's just a reality that we age. That's kind of how I looked at it. The de-aging on the faces really worked. It did help tell the story and use the actors and hear their voices, their mannerisms that Joe Pesci has and Al Pacino has. By the way, Al Pacino was amazing in The Irishman. There were some scenes where it's like, okay, that's a 75-year-old man
walking,
yeah, but whatever.
Well, outside the grocery store when he confronts the grocery store owner,
yes,
that was probably the most egregious.
It was weird because he's probably supposed to be playing like my age, a 45-year-old father. Obviously, I don't move that way. So I don't know why they didn't just use a stunt double from behind. It was a panned out shot, too.
It looked like it was a little above, too, didn't it?
Of all the money they spent, do you think they could have just gotten a body double, or even just, they superimposed the face anyways? But it was a faraway shot of him beating the crap out of somebody. Why didn't they just... Anyways, but those are small details. Like, we're looking for a perfect film, and I think The Irishman, I love a documentary type film. I love mafia type stuff. I love the history stuff. All those things I enjoy. So for me as a viewer, and I did watch it in 5 different sittings, which I don't care about. I just watched it like a miniseries, and it was a great story.
I really, really enjoyed it. When I saw that they had teamed up to make this, I actually went out and got the book and read the book. So I was kind of aware of Frank Sheeran's story. So going in, I kind of knew all the beats it was going to hit. It didn't affect my enjoyment, though. I mean, you're watching that movie to see Scorsese do what Scorsese does, right, and to see De Niro under Scorsese's direction, the return of Joe Pesci, which was just amazing to watch, and what a gift he gave us. And like you said, Pacino, I mean, I can't understand anybody who says Pacino didn't deliver in this movie. It's one of my favorite Pacino performances of all time. I watched it in one sitting, me and my wife. I look forward to watching again, and I think the de-aging, there were a handful of times where it was distracting, and I think that was more a result, Ryan, of how they did it. I know we've talked about Captain Marvel here, and I know you haven't seen it yet until they give Brie Larson the personality filter.
Yes, please.
But for that movie, they de-aged Sam Jackson. And I think the normal de-aging technology in movies requires you to wear stuff. And De Niro said, I'm not doing that. So the special effects team had to find another way to sort of map De Niro's face. And it was all just dots. And so they used all that for reference for lighting and stuff. So I think anytime the technology reveals itself, it was more the effects people trying to figure out how to make a shot work because they didn't have the normal tools that they had for like a Sam Jackson. But I think that technology is really promising. I hope it doesn't become like a thing where like it's constantly being used. But I think for a movie like this, it was essential because you couldn't really go back and forth with different actors playing them at different times. So I think this technology is a good solution for that. Unless you're going to do like an extreme time jump like you did in like De Niro's Godfather 2, where you have Marlon Brando playing one version and De Niro playing the other. But it seems like this film's a little polarizing. I know our buddy Mike Kunda is not a fan. It's his opinion. I love seeing De Niro in movies like this, and it was a joy to watch.
I just read online here that they're doing the same de-aging process with Tom Lee Jones. They're going to set him back 50 years from now. He's going to look 75. These are the top grossing films, because I realize the Joker is not included in this list, and I don't know if that would necessarily count. It's not really a Robert De Niro vehicle. He is an actor in the film. He's second billed in the film. We have listeners probably listening to this episode who are strictly Robert De Niro fans. The Worst of the Best is a unique podcast because we'll get a lot of bumps from different topics depending on the fandom of certain actors and celebrities or bands that we cover. I would suspect some Robert De Niro listeners are listening to this episode. They might want to hear our thoughts on the Joker. Have you guys seen the Joker?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, The Joker is a must-see. I will say that. I really do think it's a good film. I mean, I love the film. In fact, my DVD order is already in for the Blu-ray 4K. I will say De Niro's performance in it was really good. He played kind of a mixture between Johnny Carson and Jerry Lee Lewis type talk show host, mixed with David Letterman. So that was his character.
Jerry Lee Lewis?
Did I say it wrong? Who am I thinking of?
Well, you just did a mashup between...
Oh, the sad clown dude.
Yeah, that was Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis, my fault. Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis was the piano player, right?
Jerry Lee
married a 13-year-old.
Yeah, that's right. His cousin or something.
His 13-year-old cousin, yeah.
Right.
It was his second cousin.
Oh, that's okay then.
Then it's okay.
Wait, are we worried about the incest or the age? Which one is?
I just finished reading a book. It's about rock stars that behave badly, and one of the chapters was devoted to Jerry Lee Lewis. And in addition to marrying his 13-year-old second cousin, he probably murdered 2 of his wives.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Jerry Lee Lewis? The Great Balls of Fire dude?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's amazing.
So we could probably at some point do the worst of the best Jerry Lee Lewis killings.
Yeah. or deplorable acts. Which one was the worst? Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into it. So the Joker isn't on this list because I don't know if it really is considered a Robert De Niro vehicle. Well, let's get right into number 20. Number 20, this had a lifetime gross of $47.5 million. This is Francis Ford Coppola's 1974 sequel to the Godfather film, Godfather Part 2. This film won 6 Oscars, including the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for Robert De Niro. Is there any list? This is kind of a spoiler, but is there any list where The Godfather Part 2 would be the worst of?
Never.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Even on a list of Godfather movies, it wouldn't be the worst of. One of the rare sequels that a lot of time is known as better than the original.
Have you guys heard about that Godfather cut where it pieces together Godfather Part 1 and 2 into one film in the chronological order?
It was actually in the late 70s. I believe it was released on TV as The Godfather, the complete novel for television.
That's right.
It was cut together to be shown chronologically. We actually covered that when we were doing Rocky 2 because Talia Shire was between Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. That edition of The Godfather cut together was shown on TV. So that was one of her projects in between, even though everything was recorded, everything was done beforehand. It wasn't put out in the theaters. I think it was just done for TV.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. I really wish they would release that. I know there's some cuts out there somewhere. So any of our listeners want to send me a link, that'd be amazing. So The Godfather Part 2 came out in 1974, 1 year after Mean Streets was out. So De Niro was really not a actor yet. So the fact that he landed this role and knocked it out of the park, this was his third film, really.
And he doesn't speak English in it.
That's right. It's crazy.
All Italian.
That's crazy. Okay, and this starts that, well, I guess Mean Street sort of did, but the tough guy persona, kind of everyday mafia man type persona that De Niro carried throughout many films later in his career. Okay, Doug, go ahead with number 19.
Number 19 is Men of Honor, Robert De Niro and Cuba Gooding Jr. movie, based on the story of Master Chief Petty Officer Carl Brasher, the first black American master diver in the U.S. Navy. I saw this once. I enjoyed it, but I only saw it once.
I think I saw it in the theaters.
I think I saw it on DVD.
Well, what's your feelings on old Cuba there?
I liked him up until he played that kid in Radio. I hated him in that. I don't know if he was just like on an Oscar trying to run for these Oscar winning roles, but I hated him in Radio. I thought it was like a terrible portrayal of a handicapped person.
You get that line in Tropic Thunder that I won't repeat that Robert Downey Jr. says about chasing Oscars.
Exactly.
And Sean Penn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that came out in 2000, and it had a box office of $83 million. So that was no slouch at the box office.
At number 18, we have The Deer Hunter, which grossed $48 million and change. De Niro led an all-star cast, including Christopher Walken and Meryl Streep, in The Deer Hunter, a 1978 war drama from director Michael Cimino. The Universal film earned De Niro an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, though he ultimately lost to Jon Voight in Coming Home that year, which was another Vietnam movie. Deer Hunter, intense film.
Doug, you seen this?
This is one of my De Niro regrets.
Oh, no.
Because, I've never seen it, and it's always been on my list of things I know I have to see, and I just never come around to see it.
Yeah, so this has a lifetime gross of about $49 million. It is an incredible film. I won't give any spoilers to Doug or any of our listeners. I can't imagine any Robert De Niro listeners other than Doug. But I was a little bit late coming to this party, too. I mean, because, like I was saying before, Craig, when you dropped off there, I was saying this to Doug and our listeners, that I'm not a Robert De Niro fan in the sense I go see a film because he's in it. I see films that he's in. The Deer Hunter is such a film where I knew of its classicness. I knew of its how it was revered amongst moviegoers, and Christopher Walken's performance is incredible. So this was an incredible film. There's one sequence, and I won't spoil it, Doug, but they do a Russian roulette sequence. It is one of the most stressful things on film you'll ever watch. And De Niro's performance in that will blow your mind. Every time I see him perform at his Robert De Niro-ness, he's one of a kind. All right, number 17. This movie was critically panned, but it actually did well at the box office. Hide and Seek found De Niro playing a dad to a young Dakota Fanning at the time.
I have never heard of this movie.
Yeah, I remember when it came out. I mean, Dakota Fanning, she was the hot kid actor for a while.
Oh, easy.
Well, no, I mean, in terms of like, you had Macaulay Culkin, and then you had
Christ.
Well, In Demand.
Yes,
In Demand kid actor.
Hey, our Epstein episode's later.
I recall when this came out, and I think I saw this when it hit cable.
Yeah, so this movie only had a $25 million budget, but it did well at the box office, making $123 million at the box office. Wow. I don't think I saw it. I feel like I may have, but it came out 14 years ago, and it's probably one of those thriller... You know what? I'm going to say that I've seen it, but not enough that I can comment on it. So this will be one that we can talk about, but we can't really put up as a worst, because I don't have enough feeling on the matter to say. All right, number 16.
This one is directed by Penny Marshall. It opened in December of 1990 to a measly $417,000, but was a critical hit and garnered 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Actor for this gentleman right here we're talking about. It is the movie Awakenings, which I know I've seen, but for the life of me, I can't remember anything about it.
Wasn't Robin Williams doctor in that movie?
Yeah, so this is one of those roles that Robin Williams was doing where he plays the straight man for him. He plays it straight as a doctor. He probably has some very Robin Williams moments in it, but this is where De Niro is coming out of a catatonic type state, and Robin Williams he discovers a certain stimuli that will reach beyond the patient's respective states, and Robert De Niro is one of those people that comes out of that, comes out of his state and awakens to the world around him. I did see this movie when it came out, so I would have been, my late teens when I watched it, so I did appreciate it when it came out. It's when I was becoming an older, young person, like I could watch movies that aren't just action fare or silly comedies, and this is one of those first films where I could appreciate the drama and the storytelling, and I kind of have a soft spot for it. Again, I didn't know De Niro the way I know him now, so when I saw this movie, I was probably seeing it because of Robin Williams. Like, I knew Robin Williams from Mork and Mindy, so I followed his career more than I followed De Niro's at this point in my life.
I enjoyed this movie. It's a movie I probably haven't seen since it came out. If you have time and you're able to find it, Howard Stern, at the time, he had a show on WOR, which Doug will know, Channel 9, okay, the Howard Stern Show. And he was up in arms about De Niro's performance and said that anybody could do it. So he did a parody of it called A Waking Up. If you could find it via Google, it's pretty funny.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yes. Okay. Number 15, we have the Kevin Bacon, Brad Pitt, Dustin Hoffman, and Minnie Driver joining De Niro for Sleepers, a 1996 revenge thriller from director Barry Levinson.
Yeah, Barry Levinson. Kind of a funny director, that guy. He's done films that I really enjoy and done films that are really terrible. This movie actually made it, but it's $166 million. So it was a box office hit. It only cost $44 million, so it almost tripled its budget. Look at the cast, though. You got Kevin Bacon, De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Jason Patric, and Brad Pitt. 1995. I kind of have a soft spot for those 90s films. I don't know why, but I really enjoyed the boom of the DVD boom era of the 90s. And this was a movie that I saw on DVD. I genuinely like this film. It deals with a tough subject matter about priests molesting boys, is my understanding.
This was before it was mainstream, the whole Catholic priests, touching boys thing. This was one that stuck with me. Once in a while, these movies come along that are like tackle such a disturbing subject matter that you really can't go back to it too often because it just affects you and depresses you. And this is one of those movies for me. It was good in its own right, but it stuck with me, and I never really had the desire to go back to it because.
Yeah, there's certain films that you see once to appreciate the journey and the storytelling, but yeah, it's not the feel-good movie of the year.
Yep, agreed.
Not at all.
Number 14. This is timely. New Year's Eve. Now, De Niro didn't play a big role in this. It was kind of a ensemble cast picture. It's one of those Gary Marshall films. He did one for Valentine's Day as well. He was acting opposite Hal Berry as a sick man hoping to watch the ball drop, not his.
Isn't the E a hard E?
Hallie?
Is it Halle Berry? Halle Berry? Halle?
That's what I thought, unless I've been saying it wrong for 20 years.
Oh, man, I could have been saying it wrong. I don't know if we should even include this in the list, but it did well.
Yes,
I guess
it must be included.
Okay, roger that. So, New Year's Eve. Did anyone see this movie?
No.
I think I've seen it in various watching it 20-minute chunks on HBO.
Right. This was a time in De Niro's career, 2011, where he's kind of popping up in these kind of lighthearted or comedy-type films. This has a huge ensemble cast. It's ridiculous. Everyone from Seth Meyers to John Bon Jovi.
Do you remember the trend, though, around this time where, like, Gary Marshall was making movies just based? There's Mother's Day, there's Valentine's Day, I think. It got so out of hand.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Gary Marshall, the brother, is he not, of Penny Marshall, who directed Awakenings?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Mother's Day, New Year's Eve, Valentine's Day. Those are his three there. Oh, he's done some terrible movies.
He also, co-created Happy Days?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. The Good Shepherd.
Guess that's me, unless you want to skip over New Year's Eve and do this one.
No, we just talked about it. It's over. We're done.
All right. De Niro directed this one, The Good Shepherd. It stars Matt Damon and Angelina Jolie. CIA film received mixed reviews, and despite a Prime Award season release from Universal, was Oscar nominated only once for art direction.
Also had Joe Pesci came out of retirement.
Pesci. Yeah, did they age Pesci in this one?
Yeah, if I remember, the big glasses, and he was playing an older character.
I never went to see this one.
I believe I watched it. I know I did. I will say that probably a well-made film, but not very memorable.
Mm-hmm. I saw it in theaters, and it was, there was that trend around that time where they were making all of those kinds of movies. I think George Clooney made Syriana.
Ugh.
There were a couple of those political intrigue movies.
Yeah, this is where the politics of the actors can kind of get mixed up in the films. Like we talk about George Clooney and Syriana, where actors pretend like they have anything worthwhile to say regarding world politics, or we sometimes criticize them for their political stances, but at the same time, they're able to get into doors that we can't get into. At the same time, this was post 9/11 type stuff. I wonder if this movie would have been made had 9/11 not happened.
Who knows?
Yeah. All right, number 12.
With a lifetime gross of $67 million, we have De Niro reteaming with his Godfather Part 2 co-star Al Pacino for Michael Mann's 1995 crime drama Heat. The critically acclaimed film has been named among IMDb's 250 greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
It's number 120 out of 250 and ranked number 5 on its list of the 100 best crime movies of all time. Also one of Val Kilmer's best performances that isn't Tombstone.
Agreed. Or Willow.
I was surprised this wasn't ranked higher. It didn't bring in more at the box office. I mean,
well, it made for adjustment. I think it made 188 million.
It was a big deal when it came out because you had De Niro and Pacino
sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Because they were in The Godfather Part 2, but they never shared a scene together, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, they shared the screen for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And I remember it being a big deal at the time.
Yeah, this was the scene where they're at the coffee table or whatever, the cafe, sitting across from each other, and that was a big moment. That was kind of like the Stallone-Schwarzenegger meeting of the two biggest drama actors. They had that same kind of rival. Pacino, De Niro were the two major mafia or Italian actors. This was 24 years ago, if you can believe it. Oh boy.
You know, the mutual respect between lawman and criminal was, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that on film before. You know, at least the way these guys did it was incredible.
Yeah, and of course that big shootout at the end with oh man.
Yeah. The whole time you're wondering like what would happen if it came to blows. Like, would he do it? Would he not do it?
Yep. Good film.
And that big shootout was based in part on a real life LA bank robbery.
Oh, the one in the middle of the street, Yeah, the North Hollywood shootout. That is an amazing story.
And this was actually a very huge popular movie when it came out. I'm actually kind of surprised by it. But again, we have a reuniting of sorts with Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro in the 2001 movie The Score, because it marked Brando's final film role. De Niro and him both won Oscars portraying the same character, which is interesting in the Godfather franchise. But now they're sharing the screen for the first time. The Score opened at number 2 at the box office. It was just behind Reese Witherspoon's Legally Blonde. So this was a very successful movie financially at the time. And I didn't see this in the theaters. I did see this on video. Directed by the voice of Yoda.
And
Frank
Miss
Oz.
Piggy.
And Miss Piggy.
Yeah. And I think this was also, Ryan, for the fact that, I mean, nowadays we might not see it, but at the time, Edward Norton was considered one of the most promising actors of his generation. So you had 3 generations of serious actors in the same film together. It was almost like a 3-way passing of the torch.
There was a time that Edward Norton was the Ryan Gosling. Now Ed Norton's turned into Ed Burns.
Oh, God, I haven't thought about Ed Burns in probably a decade. Wow.
When this was coming out, I thought it was going to be something huge. And I tried convincing myself after seeing it the first time what a great movie it was. And I watched it a second time and I was like, is it though?
Marlon Brando didn't give a crap. He just wanted a paycheck. And if I remember correctly, he had an earpiece every scene of this movie. So somebody was reading his line into his ears that he would just repeat.
I think he ended up eating the earpiece.
Oh.
he thought it was a Reese's Pieces. No, it's a Erie Pieces, not a Reese's Pieces.
Oh my God. Oh man, that's all I could take. I'll see you fellas later. Are we going to The Untouchables now?
Yeah.
All right, where De Niro plays the legendary crime boss Al Capone in the 1987 crime drama The Untouchables, based on the book of the same name, co-starring the great Sean Connery, who earned an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. I think everybody's seen pictures of Al Capone in the past, and I think Al Capone, although De Niro did a good job in this film, I thought he was horribly miscast.
Ooh.
I see more Robert De Niro than anything closely resembling what we know as Al Capone.
Did you like the film?
Yes, I like the film a lot.
I remember enjoying this film. I'm a big Brian De Palma fan. I think he always makes interesting films, if nothing else.
Right.
My biggest takeaway from this, though, is I believe it's in the film Trainspotting. They have a whole conversation about how Sean Connery didn't deserve the Oscar for this, and it was pretty much just a lifetime achievement Oscar. Based on all the work he had done prior to it. It's a pretty funny scene in that movie.
And that might be true, and I don't mind that people do that to recognize somebody's work. That actually happened, speaking of kind of the De Niro connection and The Irishman, that happened with Martin Scorsese's in The Departed. Scorsese has been robbed many times with greater films, i.e. Goodfellas in 1990. Giving him the film for The Departed, I think it was their way of saying, you know what, screw it, here's your Oscar for Best Director, you have it on your mantle, let's move on.
Same thing with The Revenant for Leo.
Yep.
That wasn't his best film.
No. He had a better performance than The Wolf of Wall Street. Mm-hmm. But that being said, with this film, guys, I'm going to say The Untouchables is one of my favorite films of all time. I fell in love with it as a teenager. I love Kevin Costner. I'm a Kevin Costner mark. You know, I liked him as a young Dance with the Wolves. I guess I was at that age where I liked the movies that he was in. He did these epic type movies from Sean Connery was in this. I enjoyed him, of course, from James Bond days. So see him playing this character who kind of mentors Kevin Costner as Elliot Ness was fun to watch. And this was actually the first movie where De Niro was De Niro for me. So that was my kind of first real exposure, because I was 12 years old when this came out, and I watched it at that age. Not much to do with the demise of my parents, probably, because this was quite a violent movie. And I remember watching this thinking, boy, I like this violence. But I liked what it did to me. The reaction I got of me as a young teenager, seeing De Niro take a bat to somebody's head at the dinner table. I remember watching that like, whoa, what did I just see here? So it kind of entered into the braver form of drama. So I watched The Godfathers after. So that was kind of my Robert De Niro, I think, exposure, was seeing him as Al Capone. So it's always got a kind of a special place. I didn't know him as Robert De Niro, so seeing him play Al Capone it made sense to me because I didn't know the De Niro character, so to speak.
And you've got that great scene with the baby carriage.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
Great. All right, number 9, Backdraft. I saw this in the theaters. Ron Howard, a great director. He's done some great films, especially in the 90s. If you were going to make a movie about firefighters and make it thrilling, somehow I feel Backdraft did that. This was a big box office hit. Kurt Russell, one of my favorite actors, still to this day, one of my favorite actors. I love Kurt Russell. I love this film. And De Niro played basically a fire investigator, kind of a side role. It wasn't really a starring role. Another ensemble type cast film.
Yeah, my father was a career firefighter. So this really excited when this came out. He brought us to the theaters to see it. It really was like right up his alley. As far-fetched as it may seem as a movie, it is thoroughly enjoyable. I watched it many times since then. It's goofy, completely unrealistic, but I like this movie a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another movie that's a product of its time. It's, it fits right in with that era that you were talking about earlier, Ryan.
8 is Cape Fear. Martin Scorsese's 1991 remake of Cape Fear marked the 7th of 8 collaborations between the filmmaker and Robert De Niro. The leading man was nominated for an Academy Award and Golden Globe for Best Actor, while the film was nominated for the Golden Bear at the 42nd Berlin Film Festival. Whoa. I did a college project based on this movie. Just throughout the film, they focus on his eyes a lot. It is creepy to the core. Even like before he drowns in the end, all you see above the water is his eyes before he finally goes down. And it's just, it creeps you out big time.
Juliette Lewis, who De Niro's character goes after and basically tries to sexually assault throughout the movie. She's only 2 years older than me, if you can believe it. So when I saw this as a teenager, I had a mad crush on her. I totally had a crush on Juliette Lewis. I was like, yeah. And I saw her, of course, in Natural Born Killers and other great films. I love Juliette Lewis, and I've always had a soft spot for her. I would have been 16 when this film came out, and she would have been 18 in this film, if you can believe it.
She was playing 16, though, right? Which led
easy
to...
to do. Easy to do.
Yeah.
This is another one of those cases, too, where a remake isn't considered inferior to the original. And I'm not sure if you really call it a remake because it's based on a book.
Right.
So anytime a movie's based on a book, people always say, oh, it's a remake. Well, it's another adaptation. Either way, this is one of those movies where both versions are considered sort of successful.
The great Nick Nolte playing the father. Yeah, I talk like this in every movie I do. I don't understand a word I'm saying.
Have you guys seen him in The Mandalorian?
Well,
yeah,
his voice acting, he's not.
Or heard him?
Yeah. Tell me that makeup guy doesn't look like him, though.
That makeup job is totally inspired by. They based it on the way Nick Nolte looks.
But that's not him under the makeup, though, is it?
No, they definitely made a mask, a Nick Nolte mask.
I have spoken. All right. I love Nick Nolte. I've seen a lot of his films. I enjoy him, but I watch him with captions on because I don't understand a word he's saying. 7. Is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay.
Nope, my turn.
Jeepers. I got lost. Go ahead.
Bradley Cooper and De Niro together before they were in Silver Linings Playbook. It's a nail-biter directed by Neil Berger, and it took home the award for Best Thriller at the 2011 Scream Awards. And this is a movie where, like, Bradley Cooper, he gets like a pill. It's one of those plays on, we only use 10% of our brains, and this pill allows him to use all of it, and since turned it into a TV show. But like, he goes on to become eventually a pretty high-ranking politician.
Yeah. I never saw the TV show. It got canceled after one season, though.
So it wasn't Limitless.
It was limited. It was limited release. I never saw this film. This came out in 2011, and I wasn't a big Bradley Cooper fan at the time. He's kind of like a young, handsome De Niro to me in that I don't mind Cooper. I just don't go see movies because he's in it. So you got two actors in this film, De Niro and Cooper, both actors that I don't mind watching, but I don't go out of my way to go watch. I'm not a big fan of the movies where narcotics or chemical something or another makes people do things that are kind of, in a way, superhero-ish. I understand, but it's just like, okay, so he can jump far, run fast, or be a little bit stronger because of a drug. I think Scarlett Johansson did that for one of her movies as well, Lucy or something like that. Or Angelina Jolie did it for Salt. I don't know. It's kind of a boring premise. I'd rather he was just a mutant. I'd rather he was just a mutant, if that makes sense, than just a human with a chemical that will run out or maybe not run out. But that's why I never saw it. It never appealed to me.
But his character starts the movie as somebody who's underachieved his entire life. Getting these new abilities, sort of, it's an important part of the sort of overall character arc.
Okay.
I vividly remember the commercials for this, but I never took the time out to go see it.
All right.
Because I didn't care.
All right. Yeah, I think Doug and I are on the same page. Simpatico there. Number 6, Analyze This. This opened at $18 million. De Niro got a Golden Globe nomination. That was that kind of play on his mafia persona that he has in movies. Is this pre-Sopranos?
It was, and that was the big thing about when The Sopranos came out. I was like, wait, this is Analyze This.
Yeah, so for our listeners who don't know The Sopranos or the Analyze This concept, he's a tough guy, mob guy who's getting therapy. And therapy, as you know, is a sign of weakness for men, especially a mob guy to have. So that's the play on this, I presume.
Love this movie. I absolutely adore this movie. Every time it's on, I watch it. What a gem, directed by Harold Ramis, and Billy Crystal's great in it.
Yeah.
And De Niro, to see him sort of parody that character he had played in like Goodfellas and Casino, it was really funny.
I said earlier, too, that I don't like so much De Niro's tries at comedy. This is one of the exceptions. I thought him and Billy Crystal really bounced off each other well in this film. I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was funny, even though like it's more of a Billy Crystal movie and you focus more on his comedy than De Niro's. But again, to piggyback off of what you said, Craig, seeing him kind of goof at the characters, the type of character that he's so known for, was like a refreshing change.
Agreed. Well said, both of you. I agree. I enjoyed it too. Watched it and enjoyed it. I don't know if I saw the sequel, though.
Don't.
Okay, roger that.
Silver Linings Playbook. De Niro teamed with Cooper for 2012 Silver Linings Playbook, playing the father to Bradley Cooper, his mentally ill son. Jackie Weaver starred as De Niro's wife in the film, while Jennifer Lawrence won an Academy Award for her portrayal of Cooper's love interest. The film became a critical and commercial darling, premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival and going on to win a slew of awards. But our man De Niro here was nominated in the supporting actor category for both the Academy Awards and the Screen Actors Guild Awards.
I really enjoy this movie, based on a book. Sadly, I have a podcast that I've neglected called Big Screen Book Club, where every episode we look at a book and then a movie that was based on that book. And I think the last episode, me and my brother broke down the Silver Linings Playbook.
Yes, you did.
So I'm kind of partial to this one. I really enjoy it. I think it's a slice of Philadelphia life, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, this was a one-time viewing for me. I thought it was a fine film. I have nothing, negative to say about it. Just not memorable enough to warrant a second watching.
It's directed by a director that I do enjoy. I just never saw it, and that's David O. Russell. I've enjoyed some of his films.
Great. One of my favorite movies of all time, I Heart Huckabees.
Yes. So the next film is the animated film called Shark Tale. This is where De Niro tried his hand or voice at the kid-friendly fare, the DreamWorks film 2004. De Niro voiced the crime lord Great White Shark. It also had Will Smith, Angelina Jolie, Martin Scorsese did the voice acting, Jack Black was in it, Renee Zellweger. So this movie was a big hit too, by the way. And this was a time in 2004 when DreamWorks animation films where you could release anything that was animated to some degree and it made money at the box office. And Shark Tale proved that by making money, doing well at the box office.
I couldn't believe that this grossed that much money.
It did, yeah.
I mean, even in the DreamWorks catalog, this has to be among the bottom, when you got things like Shrek.
It was a budget of $75 million and it grossed $368 million.
Wow. I have kids and I never saw this movie.
Yeah, it's crazy, eh? Who wants to handle the last filmology there?
The last entry is the trio of films that were started with Meet the Parents. So we have Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, and then Little Fockers. Did it reestablish De Niro, kind of?
The first one certainly did. And the reason why I'm kind of putting these all together, I hope this isn't anyone's worst pick, is just because it's really just one big story. We can, for poops and giggles, pick the worst of the three. But
Little Fockers.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. I agree. As is often the case in most trilogies, the third one was the worst one. Meet the Parents was a great movie. I love that movie. De Niro played a great job of kind of playing that tough guy's father-in-law to be, again, he's playing to his screen persona of being that tough guy.
Which I think benefited him.
Yes.
Playing a straight man to Ben Stiller's goofy guy, I think really benefited De Niro in this.
The sequel, Meet the Fockers, it was funny enough because it played on the word Fockers, of course, because that was the big punchline in the first film. Barbra Streisand and Dustin Hoffman, they were great. It was fun to see Dustin Hoffman play a fun character again.
He's so little. You really get a feeling for how small he is in that movie.
That's fair. That movie was huge.
Yeah.
The sequel, $500 million.
I actually prefer that to Meet the Parents. Meet the Parents, for me, it's a funny movie, but there's a point in that movie where you just start to feel bad for the Ben Stiller character. It's almost you're watching a snuff film or something where it's just how much worse can it get for this guy? And
Yeah, that's good.
I kind of feel like Meet the Fockers kind of tempered that a little bit, where he still has a bad time. It's not as cruel.
Damaging.
Yeah, and Barbra Streisand and Dustin Hoffman were great additions to that cinematic universe. But I just
yeah, that's funny. That's funny. The
Fockers cinematic universe.
Fockers cinematic
FCU too. This barely touches how many films De Niro's been in. Of course, as is the case with our podcast, the worst of the best, we don't pick the best. I mean, these are the top grossing, kind of the biggest box office draws that De Niro has been in one way, shape, form, or another. But he has been in tons of movies. You just go to his Wikipedia page. He has enough of a career where you would have a healthy podcast reviewing his films. You could do it for years. So this is just glancing or glossing over his career and over the best of his box office. So I'll pick my worst from his top grossing films of all time. And the criteria that I picked is, of all the films, if you put them all in front of me and I had to watch them all over again, which film would I freely say no to? One film, and that would be Shark Tale. I'm not a fan of these animation films. I'm really not. And I'm especially not a fan of animal movies. I've never really enjoyed animals as talking characters. And fish talking in an underwater world is just, it wasn't very funny. And it's kind of boring. Robert De Niro's voice acting is unnecessary in this kind of film. It doesn't add to the film. It's kind of a cop-out picking the animation film as the worst pick. If I had to pick a second pick that was not an animation film, if I had to pick a second pick of where it's not an animation film because it's kind of a cop-out, The Good Shepherd is kind of a boring film. It's not a fun CIA film. All right.
Yeah, based on just the ones that I've seen, I would go hands down with the score. I expected so much more from that film based on who was in it and the subject matter, a heist, a couple of professional thieves. I thought Edward Norton, his cover was he was some special ed janitor guy. That's how he was able to get inside. And his portrayal of somebody with special needs was offensive and just terrible. It was awful and unnecessary. De Niro, you're a legendary actor, man. You got handcuffed in that movie. Not a good movie.
Have you seen The Good Shepherd?
I never saw The Good Shepherd.
That might explain that choice. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Using Ryan's criteria, I'm going to have to go with New Year's Eve. Garbage.
Sure.
Gimmick film. It was a movie made by a committee. So that's my pick. If I had to go with a second, I would probably go with Hide and Seek. just because your generic thriller didn't need De Niro.
All right, well, that's awesome, guys. We ran a little bit long, but not in a bad way. I think 20 minutes of it was technical difficulties. So
yeah. No consensus, too. So that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the listeners think.
Yeah, well, it's a combination, like Doug was saying. There might have been some films we haven't seen that are probably worse than the ones we've picked, but that's the criteria. So that's awesome stuff, guys. It was a lot of fun having you on the show. Hope to have you on again. Wink, wink. Yeah, until next time, thanks for filling in, you guys, and all the best to Robert De Niro and his future films. I'm sure he's got a couple more in his pocket before he passes on from this mortal coil.
Thanks for having us, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally. It was, as always, it's an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again. And remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud, and we're here to help you find it.